just a couple of days ago, I watched one of cinema's most classic films in preparation for another film. I watch a film in preparation for another film. I've done that before. I've watched a film in preparation for another film. I've done that before. In this case, it is the beloved 1941 classic? 41, I think. 41 classic Citizen Kane. It's interesting. I haven't seen many films from this era. Like, sure, yes, Wizard of Oz came out before this film. Snow White came out before this film. But technically speaking, this is one of those films in the black and white era. And I think for me, a lot of people judge films based on when they came out. Oh, because I could say, oh yeah, watch this film, watch X film. And then they look, but this film's in black and white. It came out in the 40s. But see, that's the thing. Good films are good films. Because ultimately, what do you need for a film? A camera and a group of people to be in the film. Essentially, that's what a film is. Having a camera, filming something. That's what a film is. So as long as a camera in Earth has been around, films can get made. Ultimately, that's the truth. As long as a camera and Earth itself can be made, then you can make a film. You can have a camera and film anything you want, and that's a film. Now, there's different quality of film, and as technology evolves, the quality of film and the quality of technicality of a film could evolve. So, but ultimately, the era the film comes out has no effect on the quality of the story, and the quality of the actors, and the quality of the performances, and the quality of the story in the film itself. So, while it won't have the technicality of some of these later films, it still can be very, very special. And it's actually, the Citizen Kane's coming up on its 80th. If you thought 70 was a lot, Citizen Kane's coming on up its 80th birthday. The fact of the matter is, if you're born the year it came out, you're 80. So the people who were in the film are like 100 plus, like 130. So what do I think about it? Enough about talking the backstory and the history of it. I liked it. I think it's definitely a strange film. I think it's a unique film in that you're telling the story of this guy, knowing where he ends up, yet seeing the story through the perspective of different people that an investigator is interviewing. It's an interesting concept, saying like, hey, we want to tell this story about this guy, Charles Foster Kane, his rise and fall, as a newspaper businessman, because think about it, newspapers were probably the big thing, because when you think about it, now it's like social media and YouTube and TV and the news, NBC, CNN, Fox, all that stuff. But back then, how did you get your news? Was not a phone. Was not TV. It was newspapers. So running a newspaper business must get you a hell of money because every single household needed newspapers. Otherwise, they wouldn't know what was going on in the world, So, I think that was interesting, seeing kind of the rise and fall of this kind of guy and his very much scandalous and mysterious life, and kind of telling it through the perspective of an interviewer interviewing different people who had key functions in Kane's life. And he's in the investigators interviewing them because of Kane's death. So throughout the whole film, you know where Kane ends up dying, but saying Rosebud, which is interesting. Let me talk about that. Rosebud. When he said on the snow cone and said Rosebud, I was thinking, where have I heard Rosebud from? Where have I heard Rosebud from? And then I was thinking, and you know what came up? Schitt's Creek. And it's funny because I watched Schitt's Creek about a day before I watched this film. And when I think about it, oh yeah, Rosebud. How that makes total sense because that was the name of the motel. the Rosebud Motel. And I didn't make the correlation at first because I just assumed Rosebud was named after Johnny Rose and Stevie Bud. Rosebud. So maybe when they were creating the show, they decided to have a little hint, wink wink at Citizen Kane, which would be a crazy connection between Citizen Kane and Schitt's Creek, which is weird. So that's interesting. So I mean, I liked it. I think it's a very interesting film. You could tell a lot of tropes in this film that this film was clearly very influential in a lot of films after. I think it seems very influential for films like The Godfather. I think I could see connections with that, kind of like the connection of Vito Corleone and Charles Kane. I think maybe, but it's interesting seeing this guy's whole life, where he just started up as an innocent little boy and then got taken from his family. It's a very interesting film. I think as time goes on, I like it more and more when I understand it more and more. I honestly prefer this film over Casablanca. I guess maybe because I'm not the target audience for Casablanca. I'm not the biggest on romance and all that stuff. I'm more into the great British stories and stuff like that. So maybe that's why. But definitely, I think it's worth a watch. But I think it's only really worth the watch for film fans. And I say it's only worth a watch for film fans is because at this day and age, you really have to pay attention to it more than you would for most films. Because it's so dark. You could tell in black and white, but you can also tell that this film was filmed in dark locations. Because it's super dark. They speak very fast, muffled. So, I mean, this is something that in today's day and age, I wouldn't recommend to, like if I go up to a family and say, for family movie night, you should watch Citizen Kane. I wouldn't do that because I think it takes a certain level of paying attentionness that I don't know if most families would be able to have. But I think for film fans, I think it's definitely a must watch. If I had to create a list, this is an interesting topic. If I had to create a list for students in film school, what films would I put on the list? I would say, for beginners, let's look at this. The first day we come into school, let's pitch a film school what to watch list. I think Citizen Kane's up there as a film you have to watch. I think you would have to watch Citizen Kane in film school because of kind of the way it set the tempo of how films in this genre would end up looking like and feeling like. I would say obviously the Godfather films, particularly 1 and 2. I would say Lord of the Rings is definitely a must-watch, I think in the scope of Lord of the Rings. And then Star Wars, the original Star Wars films, not just because they're great, but because of teaching students in film school what you can do without CGI. Because when you think about it, CGI wasn't around in the 70s and 80s for the relative most part. So basically, I think Star Wars, not only is it a great film, but why it's useful in film school is because with Star Wars, it can teach you how to use practical effects without using CGI, practical effects in your films. But also, I think great storytelling, how you don't need build-up films to culminate this, and definitely pacing. I think Star Wars with pacing on stuff, so definitely a must-watch for film fans and people who want to get in the film business. Stay tuned for videos coming at you.